Family, I'm glad to be with you for another week. I hope that you have been having a fantastic week so far. I'm laughing because I've been leaving my blinds open and I kind of stay on a major street and it's a sidewalk right there, but it's some trees to create a illusion of privacy. But I think somebody walking by and they can see my lights and everything. So they they were trying to get my attention in a good way though, just rooting me on. You know what I mean? It kind of reminded me of the time I told you about when I jumped out that car and I landed, and the first thing I heard was "woo hoo." So it puts me back in that element. But again, family, glad to be with you all. We are on our crown. So we're going to do the crown for some energy cleaning. Wow, my phone making noise. It says it's rain in my area. So, but purple for your crown is purple, violet, whatever you like to say. And the element for that is thought. So, in our visualization, we're going to be mindful of our thoughts. It's going to be really about thoughts and thinking like that. And tonight we are going to talk about the ways our body shows us some of the things it necessarily needs to help us along our healing path, and some of the spaces that we want to either cultivate for ourselves or align ourselves to these types of spaces to create a nourishing environment for our healing. Because, we're looking at our thoughts as seeds that we plant in our mind, but then also our physical is a seed in the garden of this world. So, whatever we subject ourselves to, the spaces we allow ourselves to be in, the energy we interact with, we deal with, it has an effect on us. You know what I mean? It's your seeds. So, and you know, I told you I always talk about to being a part of this men's group, right? And I love my men's group, but Monday we had a conversation, and it made me really look at things a little. It expanded my perspective, and I just kind of want to talk about it because making these shows, and I've said it to you all before, but doing these shows and doing a podcast or whatever, it's not a statement of good. It's just a statement of is, right? So, no matter how you think about it, but the process to do these things take a lot of work, right? And truthfully, most of our content comes from our interactions with people. You know what I mean? Whether it's our everyday interactions or our long term interactions or our one moment interactions, it's just our interactions with people and our interactions with the information around us, right? You know what I mean? And in saying all that, one of the brothers helped me recognize that there's a space that when we do that, that we can be very offensive, right? Now, I recognized it before because, I've talked about my own, I talk about my life on the show. So there are times where I've had to talk about my interactions with people, and in the story, they ain't always come out the best. You know what I mean? But so I understand that there's a level of risk that that you can be offensive to people. But anyway, all of that to say, cut that long story short. is I definitely want to say it's a very fine line that we have to walk to make sure the things that we're saying is helpful and not hurtful. And I know I'm one of those people who have a tendency to like to put the raw emotional words um to our actions and interactions so that it will motivate us to not do these things. Like I'll say, like subjecting yourself to, man, person you dated, and you subjecting yourself to the old pictures, the old conversations, the old anything is equivalent to an idea of self harm. Not wanting to let that stuff go, some of your traumas, is equivalent to the idea of self harm, but we normally don't call it that. So I'm one of those people that like to put the raw words to what's going on. And in being that, I know I recognize that I can be offensive, but all that to say is I want this to be a safe space where I want it to be a welcoming space. And I apologize if I've ever offended anyone. You know what I mean? I appreciate the brother for being open, honest, and vulnerable with us. You know what I mean? Because it definitely helped expand my view of the work that we do and how more considerate I possibly need to be as I have the best intentions to heal myself and provide others with the tools to heal themselves, right? All right. So we're going to do the bowl. And tonight we're going to do a different breathing technique. And we're going to start off a little simple. I don't know how I want to do it, but we're going to try dragon breathing. So I'm going to start off a little simple with you all, but it's a very simple technique, so it should be easy. Hey, Liberty, you trying to get in for your 15 minutes before you got to clock in? Oh, God. Shoot, just to tell you know what? I'm glad you came on. You definitely want to check out dragon breathing. And if you miss it, if you don't get to do the breathing exercise with us, then do your research on dragon breathing. In the family, we must be communicating well. Liberty, you gone already? Let me find out. All right, so, whew. So how we do dragon breathing is very simple. Well, we're going to start off simple. There's a ton of variations to how you do it, but for this being our first time, I just kind of want you to focus in on your breathing. You know what I mean? Just focus on controlling your breathing and making sure you're focusing on actually using your stomach to push the air out, actively using your stomach to push the air out. So all you do is, in repetition, 3 to 5 times, you breathe in as deep as you can, filling your lungs with as much air as you can. And then you breathe out through your mouth and you force the air out. So essentially, you can start off like, oh, well, it happens, brother. So essentially, you can start off like calmly and then grow. So I'm going to give you an example. So you breathe in, like that 3 times. So you, on my count of 3, you breathe in as deep as you can and then force the air out through your mouth and repeat that 3 times. And each time, push a little harder with your breath out. So 1, 2, 3, breathe in, deep breath, fill your lungs, breathe out. Breathe in, deep breath, fill your lungs, breathe out. Last time, deep breath, fill your lungs, breathe in, and push it out with all of your might. There you go. So now while you are in this space, I want you to start visualizing yourself. The element for your crown is thought. So I want you to think about your future healed self. And I want you to visualize you talking to your future healed self. And ask yourself, what sort of thoughts did I need to start thinking to create the life I want to live? I want you to think about the thoughts you would need to create hope. What do those ideas look like? How do people who have hope in their heart think? I want you to ask yourself, what ideas and thoughts come with people who have forgiveness? Ask yourself, what ideas and thoughts come for people who have love in their hearts? And I want you to picture yourself giving you those answers. Because there is a space in time where you exist without all of the burdens of your past experiences. And in that space and time, you can ask yourself, what do you need to help? Okay, so family, we're going to get it started. Energy is an interesting thing, right? And you know, surprising I got my glasses on today. I know our homeboy Monsieur said something about it last week, but giving my eyeballs a contact rest, and I ordered some new ones, and they won't be here till Friday. So purposely, I timed it so I can give my eyeballs a rest and know that it'll be here. As a matter of fact, they'll be here Thursday. But it's funny. I say this: there is a benefit in life to not matching energy, and you got to recognize those opportunities and forgive yourself when you don't. You know what I mean? I'm a little mad at myself a little earlier today because I've grown so much in my road rage, but the day I gave into it, so I got to give myself a little forgiveness and give myself a little grace because I generally don't match energy. I just bring my own energy. You know what I mean? So tonight we are going to talk about this idea of some of the things our body shows us that allows us to recognize what it needs that what it needs to nurture and nourish a healthy you, right? And it's funny because I had this little story about this squirrel, and it's very interesting, right? So it's about a little squirrel, and he's supposed to be the smartest squirrel, and he's known for his quick thinking and his ability to gather the most nuts for winter. And then, so it's fall, and the squirrel starts feeling anxious and all this stuff about having to gather all this nuts, and he starts making mistakes and um, forgetting where he put nuts and dropped nuts. And then one day he wound up having to relax, and he sat there and he wound up seeing a new path in the forest that he had lived in all this time, because he actually took the time to be still and break out of his normal routine, right? Because his normal routine was now creating a feeling of anxiousness and anxiety and overwhelm. And this is a routine that he has used that allowed the rest of the forest to think of him as the most the smartest, quick thinking, and he always gathered the most nuts. Now he's anxious, overwhelmed, forgetting things of that nature. And in that forgetting, he wound up stepping outside his path, and he's seen a new path in the forest, like I said, that he had lived in his whole life. And he decided to go on that path. And of course, when he went on that path, he found abundance. Acorns galore. Trees had the most nuts that you could ever find. And essentially, I just told y'all the whole story. But I think understanding the moral of the story is recognizing when our old ways and behaviors no longer serve us, recognizing when it's a space and time for us to be still and open to see new paths and direction. And it's also a space for us to have the courage to take those risks, right? And a lot of times it's either you recognize them or life forces you to it. And I think I told y'all about my going to Milwaukee to get my master's degree. But it was one of those things, man. Listen, they have this idea attached to masculinity. Well, no, it ain't even necessarily attached to masculinity, but it is attached to this idea of manhood. And to be a man, you just work. It's almost like We are here to work and die. You know what I mean? So we work, and my younger self subscribed to that, to this idea of even to exceed, to achieve success, you just had to work, 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 work. And even though that way was, man, working that hard can be bad for your body. I was not willing to change that because my idea of manhood and who I was as a man was low key attached to that, which is crazy or interesting in its own way. And then I lost my job. So something like that changed the trajectory because my identity was based on me working hard. And at that point, I was working factory jobs. I was working mailroom. Man, I told you I was the dude that was putting coupons in your Sunday paper. When you sent your check to the bank, I was the guy that used to have people that sit there and open those up. You stuck them in machines. I was that guy, man. I worked at the factory, so I lived. We talked about it, many different lives, but my identity of who I was, I've been working since I was 14. Part of my identity was based on working hard. So when I lost my job, I lost a piece of myself, and it forced me to be still. And when I was able to be still, I saw that there were new opportunities that I never would have imagined had I continued on my old path, had I not slowed down to assess where I was and what was happening. The unfortunate thing, life forced me to, but at least I was wise enough to know that that's the time to do that. And because of that, I also recognized there's a space for me to take a risk. And I took a risk. I went to Milwaukee, like I told you, a place that I didn't know anybody. And in that space, I found abundance. And ironically, one of the things I'm laughing now because I was getting ready to say one of the things I found an abundance of was love, and it was very unique because it was a love from strangers, a love from people who didn't know me and had no reason to love me. As a matter of fact, me going to Milwaukee helped me have this understanding that love is not something to be earned. It is something to be given. You know what I mean? And a lot of us are here because of love was given. A lot of us are where we are because the love was given. We ain't have to earn it. When I went to Milwaukee, I didn't have to prove myself to these people. They looked at my life and what I stood for and how I carried myself as a testament to who I was, and they loved me for that. So now I can live in a space where I understand that love is something to be given, not earned, right? So that's a seed to plant in your mind. Um. Anyway, I just thought that me sharing with the Milwaukee thing might be a better way to connect the squirrel story, and hopefully you can see some ways where you can recognize that that energy is moving in your own space and in your own life. So over the last couple of weeks, I've had an opportunity, which we're going to discuss, is to think about what I need to create these healthy thoughts. You know what I mean? What kind of things do people who have happiness in their life, how do they think? How do people with forgiveness in their life think? They think different than me. You know what I mean? But what do they think? And I have to make sure I put myself in a space where I don't judge how they think as wrong. I have to look at it as I have my tools, they have my tools, and now I got two tools in my toolbox, right? So I might have a flathead screwdriver. That's my idea. and their idea might be a Phillips head. And in life, you really need both. So there are times you're gonna be right, that flathead's gonna be right. There are gonna be other times where that other person's gonna be right as well. Man, what the hell? Excuse me, family. My notifications going ham sandwich. So in interacting with people, like I said, I try to start looking at the patterns that appear in our lives. And a lot of times that's where the conversations for our show comes from, right? So in the over this week, I've been having the opportunity to help people recognize how their body is sending them signs of what they need or what they need to specifically address. And in turn, one of the reasons I've been provided the opportunity to help others is because that's the space, I'm in that same space in my life. So I'm recognizing what I need to be able to create this energy. So it's not surprising, I would say, that I'm attracting an energy that is similar to that. So it's funny. And I got a couple of stories that made me wind up having this situation, recognizing this pattern. So I was talking to a friend earlier, and we were just talking about food and you know what I mean, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I always harass them. I'm surprised they're not on the show, because they'll come on the show. Man, I gotta change TikTok too, because we are not reading before I let go. Um, always teased her about her love for rice. The only person I think that loves rice more than me is her, right? You know what I mean? So I always joke with her, like anytime I'm cooking rice, I'll text her and be like, I'm making rice. Try to seduce you with rice, because I'm that kind of person. I'll make a joke out of anything. And ironically, in having that conversation with her, she was telling me how she was craving fish, 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 fish. And I don't know well, I know how I made the connection. I studied and looked, but now that I've made this connection, I always recognize that when people are craving fish, I was like, girl, you probably depressed, right? And it's funny because when people say stuff like that, our initial reaction is generally to say no. You know what I mean? And of course, that's what wound up happening. Oh my God. Let me tell you something, family. There is always, be careful of your spelling. And we probably, this situation just is like deja vu. So this situation is hilarious. You heard it, like, yo, speak the devil's name and he show up. It's a bunch of little sayings about be careful on what you say. You know what I mean? Listen. I just put the period on the right story. And I wasn't gonna say who the right person is. Because I try to respect people's privacy, right? And I know I just checked. The right person wasn't on the call, because I just said, I'm surprised they not on the live. And as soon as I look, they on the live. Now, all of that isn't to say that they are actually depressed, right? It is to say that we need to start making some connections between some of our cravings and what our body needs to heal itself, right? And I say this because we know our old self had cravings, and a lot of times we talk about cravings in a negative context. But when you get on this healing path, you're going to have cravings too. You're going to crave being better. And that better comes with a different set of cravings. So your body is going to crave things a little differently to address some of the things that you didn't know you were dealing with. Right. And then I wound up talking to another friend. And anxiety is a real thing that we deal with, right? You know what I mean? I talked about it. We all deal with it, blah, blah, blah. And in having this conversation or with this friend, they were saying how they don't even really see how they're dealing with it, right? And as being a friend, I definitely reminded them, just think about some of the things you're dealing with. And that could be it. You know what I mean? And what it really made me think about is sometimes these feelings become so normal in our life, or some of the things that we deal with that creates these feelings of depression, sadness, or anxiety are so normalized in our lives that we don't even realize that they are the root of our issues, right? The decisions we know it, you know what I mean? But because we live with it, um, like I said, it becomes a normal way for us where we don't even recognize how it is the cause of it, because recognizing it comes with a whole new set of expectations. Because once you recognize it, you got to deal with it. And it's funny because I always recognize when I'm in a space of kind of feeling like a little depressed, and I call it light depressed. Because my motivation is very different. You know what I mean? And I can even think about so I start recognizing one of the things how we set up systems to allow us to assess ourselves. So I do social media, we trying to be live. But once you set up all that stuff, they tell you every week and every month if you've been active, if your interactions are up, down, or the same. Right. And I noticed between October to now, October, November, my stuff has been down, right? And my motivation has been very different, which is one of the reasons why my stuff has been down, right? And generally, I recognize that as a sign that I'm feeling a little depressed about something, right? And my body starts needing certain things to address it, right? But recognizing myself also, I recognize how there's space for me to have new labels to these old behaviors because I'm a new person. So they could be showing me different things. And life is such a beautiful thing and has a very interesting way of giving us the answers that we need if we are open to receiving them, right? So think about it like as you are assessing who you are, you got to recognize when your body is in need of something. And an easy way to recognize when your body's in need of something is through your cravings, and two, how you're interacting with life around you. And there's something else that I would say that you need. And it's funny because it's been a space to have this conversation several times. Is to be honest with yourself in the self analysis and to be truthful about how you make your decisions. Right. And I told y'all, and it's funny because it came up in just talking with people on how you make your decisions, right? And I said that some of us we like to think that we make our decisions with our heart or our mind, But there are other things that we can make our decisions. Like I said, we've known people who make their decisions with their sexual organs. If that can't be pleased, nothing else can be pleased. Those are sacral thinkers. They exist. And like I said, it's people who feel it in their gut. And like, I don't know, like I said, I like to make a lot of gut decisions. And then we know those heart people. And then we know the people also try to logic everything, right? And I say this so we can also recognize that at any space and time, we can be using a different energy point to make decisions. So just because you're a logical person and normally you use your crown to make your decisions, that doesn't mean there aren't spaces and places in time where you need to use your heart or you've actually used your sacral, which can be very interesting. So we also want to talk about, I appreciate you, Tati, sometimes. I'm bored of I know I got less swallow left. We want to talk about how, you see, I got my glasses. I went with the white tie, and it's supposed to be a purple and white shirt, but the purple's so purple, it design all blends in. You know what I mean? So I want to talk about some of the spaces we want to start also creating for ourselves and aligning ourselves to that will help us cultivate a space for healing and nourishing on our journey. So one, make sure you're taking stops to recognize the signs that your body is sending you on what you need. So one type of space that you really want to be able to create for yourself is, Toddy, I'm glad you're here too. Because you one of the persons, persons, which is an actual word, but scratch. One of the reasons I said one of the persons is because, honest, you are the person that really had that idea, that question in my mind of like, well, where do I start? You know what I mean? So that question, I'll give you credit, is one of the examples of where you got me back. Now, that question lives in my mind, went free. So I think about it all the time. So essentially, this is where this comes from. What type of spaces do we need to align ourselves or cultivate for ourselves that create an energy of healing, right? So one space that we need is a space of solitude. And space of solitude is a very interesting one. Solitude, most of these spaces are to be used as tools, right? So solitude, you have to look at it as a tool. You use solitude kind of like a bear uses hibernation. It's a space to review, analyze, adjust. It's like a good space for self-assessment, right? But you also have to be clear that solitude is not a result, right? Like we talked about it, how solitude, once you get healed, it's a lonely space. Healing is a lonely process because it's individual to you. But healing is a communal thing. Solitude is a tool only for processing emotions, ideas, and thoughts. But outside of that, you want to make sure that you step outside of solitude and create these other spaces, right? And you want to be aware on if and how you are using solitude. And be aware on if you are using solitude in a way where you don't know if you actually are healing. One of the major things that you want to do in this healing process is you do got to step outside to see if these new ideas, you got to practice. These are skills, and you got to get out in life. You got to practice. So you got to recognize if your solitude And if you are healing, or you are just in a space where you don't have nobody around you to trigger you. So recognize that's a question you have for yourself. You're making sure if you actually are using space, the solitude that you have as a space for healing or a space to not be challenged, right? Second, next space you want to have is a space for healing. And essentially what I mean by that is community. And the next space that you need, these two kind of go hand in hand a lot because you can create the next space individually, paired, or as a group. And the choice is yours. But you need a space for healing, a community of people who don't have all the answers, but they are working to be a better version of whoever they are. They don't have to be perfect. They don't always have to get it all right. But you do want to be able to be in a space where other people are actively healing, right? Which is one of the reasons we do this show. We try to create an online space, a virtual space, because energy goes wherever you send it. It doesn't have to be in person. Like my men's group is very rarely in person. It's always online, but the energy goes wherever you send it. But you want to make sure you align yourself with a community or a group of people who are doing the same thing you do. Because these people will probably be they will probably be one of these spaces. There'll be the space after the next. The next space that you want to have is a space for love. You really want to look at your ideas of love, how you share love, how you give love, how you receive love. And you want to see if those ideas are creating the freedom you need for healing or the prison that keeps you trapped to your past. Because remember, the thoughts and ideas that we think create our reality. So if you feel like you're in a space where you can't give love, then you are in a space where you can't give love. So you want to actively prioritize a space where love is given and intimacy is given, right? And one of the reasons I say this is because, and it's even with myself, I deal with this recognizing now because it's a trigger for me. But even in a space that allows you to share touches, whether they be hugs, gentle, just loving touches, because so many of us don't have that space and we are out here touch deprived. So that when we find a space or we find someone that we allow to touch us, sometimes we endure or we allow or we just do some very strange things because we put ourselves in such a small box on how we love that the only space that we allow our love to go is that space. So we are depriving ourselves. And I don't want you to put yourself in a box where you only allow those loving touches to come from one space. And I say this because I see this a lot with parents. They put all that responsibility on their children, and that is such a tough burden to bear. Parents, do not make your child be your sole source of love. Even if you have to love yourself a little bit more, make sure you do that. And that's prioritizing that. Next, And probably one of the most important, because we all like to dodge this one. I ain't fill my cup up. So we water bottle. Is a space for accountability. Now, this is definitely one of the spaces that you want to create for yourself. You need to hold yourself accountable for the decisions that you make and the outcomes that you receive from those. And you also want to create a space where others will hold you accountable without judgment. They will respect your feelings, they respect your thoughts, but they will also hold you accountable to who you are trying to be. You hear me? That is a slight motive. That is a supporting factor that many of us miss out on because we're so afraid of accountability, because of what accountability means, the burden that comes with it, and all of those things, right? But we want to be accountable so that we are assessing if we are doing the healing things. So we want to have a space for accountability. You also want to have a space to take risk without judgment. And one way I say this is a space that allows you to take emotional risk. And that risk is to be emotionally exposed and vulnerable. So many of us have built up so many guards to protect ourselves. Our ability to expose ourselves has atrophied, which means it has gotten tired. You don't use it, you lose it. So we have to make sure that we are cultivating spaces that allows us to take risk, and that risk is very specific: emotional exposing of yourself, emotional vulnerability of yourself. You have to be able to do it with yourself, for yourself, and for others, and with others, right? So a space for risk without judgment. And when you put all these spaces together, you will have at least a solid foundation for that thing that we've talked about a bunch. That safe space. That's the totality of a safe space. And the ironic thing about that, each one of those individual spaces that we put together create this one large safe space, all hinge on one thing: our interaction with people. So we still have to be able to interact with ourselves. Right. So last thing, I kind of want to tie it up with a little story. Because I talked about it a little earlier and I processed, and I said some of the signs that I was showing were signs of depression, right? And as I've been praying and meditating and trying to figure out what it is, because it does feel a little different. A little different. And then I recognize, because one of the patterns that have been showing up consistently in my life lately is this idea of grief. I've been helping people get beyond grief. And what I recognize is one of the reasons I'm attracting that energy is because I am in a space of grief. And I'm saying this to you because it's a very interesting space of grief that I never would have applied what my body was showing me as grief to. I'd applied it to depressed. You know what I mean? But what made me really start thinking about that is grief is what I said. That safe space, interacting with people, how people want to interact with me differently. And it's specifically a specific group of people, or it's not even just people because you put faces to it, but it's a specific energy that is like they feel kind of like to be around me, they got to be their perfect self. Hey, pretty black girl, I ain't seen you in a while. Glad to have you. The family missed you. Um, but how differently people have wanted to interact with me has been funny because it seems like people feel like they gotta have it all together to interact with me, and that's very unique. That's very unique. And a lot of times, what makes it a little more peculiar because it's people who know me, which is very interesting to me. And from the thoughts of that, I tied string together and made connections where I realized that I am in a space of grieving my old self because the way that I would normally respond or how I would normally interact. For example, this idea in this space of love. There's a space where I told you when we're not in a space where we can give the love that we want, we can become very touch deprived. And normally, when I'm in this space, because it's not, I mean, we get in this space where we all been touch deprived, we've missed the touch, and we want to touch or whatever the intimacy. We label that a lot of different things. But normally in my life or my old self, it's been a triggering space where I'd make bad romantic decisions. Simple as that. And I know at this point I probably am. People have said before that I can be hard, but I know I'm at this point. I probably am still hard, but it's very different because I want to be smart and making sure I'm not making those sacred decisions because I'm triggered, right? Because I'm touch deprived. And all of that made me recognize. So now I'm in a space of grief, and it's okay because I got an amazing answer. And I don't even think they realized it was another one of those, you know how I'm like, cracking the glass, a fracture in my timeline. I was talking with a friend last night, and it was crazy. I don't even know how I want to start. So I remember I talked to y'all about my knee, right? And I said my knee had started popping, and I promise you, I remember the day it started popping. And I've even told you all, I just kind of applied it to as a reminder to not make the decision that I did before to date this type of woman, right? And I went to the doctor and everything. I had them do all these x-rays and they was like, yo, your knee look fine. Maybe you're just getting old. You know what I mean? So that's your new norm. So I've been going about it kind of accepting that it's my new norm and it's a new burden that I'm going to have to carry based on just a reminder. Your body sometimes it will, as a matter of fact, all the time, it'll give you reminders of what the decisions not to make, which we definitely have to sit with to make sure that we are not living or making that decision in a space of fear. But I'm talking knee going crazy, and I swear it's just a reminder for my ex. So fast forward, because that's a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. You know what I mean? The day that my knee popped. And it's funny because I'm athletic. Man, I used to call myself unbreakable. My brother was glass man. He break like the wind. I couldn't break nothing. But anyway, fast forward, I'm talking to a friend on Monday night, and they are telling me about a very interesting hurt that only a few people have ever experienced, right? And it's one of those hurts where you messing with somebody or you dating somebody, and then you get a call or you make a call and somebody else answer that phone. It's somebody else on the other end of the phone that is not who it's supposed to be. Whether you call your girl and some dude answer the phone, or a dude call you, or some girl, Barbara, this Shirley, or whatever, boop, boop, boop. Some girl called you about some dude. And it was funny because, as she telling me a story, I'm helping her process grief, which is one of the examples of what I attracted grief. And it was crazy because in my effort to help her process, I tried to share a piece of my life. You know what I mean? To help her know that I understand the emotional battle that she's about to endure. Right. And I've even shared it with you all about that I did ask somebody to marry me before. Now I've shared that story on here before a bunch. So we're not gonna go into the details of it. But I did ask somebody to marry me before. And one of the incidents, and it was just crazy on how it was, because I remember one time when I called her and some dude answered the phone. And after that, I was still crazy enough to ask that girl to marry me, right? And she said yes. And then later on, she said no. But as I'm sharing this story with my friend to show her that I can empathize and sympathize, I say something that hits me in my stomach so hard. I was like, girl, I got a wounded knee. And as soon as I said that, it was like, shh. And if she ever sees this, she'll know because I paused the conversation. I was like, girl, ooh. So when that glass broke, me saying that simple statement that I had a wounded knee, my body, me telling you, my body was popping. And I know it comes from some event that I've experienced romantically. I was applying it to the wrong event. So I had thought that I was beyond that, right? And I am. I don't feel the emotions. I've done a lot of healing from that relationship. But there's one aspect that I really didn't take time to investigate individually, and I probably should have, was that me asking her to marry me. Because when I said I got a wounded knee, I said that because I was telling her, I was like, girl, I done got on my knee before and asked somebody to marry me. And I was one of those people who did it the right way. You ask before you even ask. You feel me? They tell you yes before they tell you yes. So I asked, she said yes. I asked, she said yes. So I did it the right way. They got to know all the type of stuff. Experience things. I did it on how they say is the right way. And when I realized that, I never really, it's funny because when people ask me even now, do I want to be married? I talk about that kind of loosely because somewhere deep inside, I do. You know what I mean? It is a goal. But having that conversation helped me recognize that I have a wounded knee. And there's a space of grieving that I also need to do to release. And the wild thing about that is, ever since I said I had a wounded knee, my knee has not popped one time. So we recognize the signs our body sends us to let us know what we need to focus on and what we need to heal. Because a lot of times we take it as coincidence, but it ain't coincidence. And it took a little time, and it took some dedication, and it took community through interacting with others. They allowed me to find my wounded knee, right? So, family, that is pretty much the show. And I want you all to start taking time to think about how you truly make decisions. What part or what energy points motivates you in your decision making? Excuse me. Two, slow down and take time to recognize the signs that our body is showing us on what it needs to. It must be Twitch because it say the stream disconnected and I'm looking at you all right now. But anyway, take the time to start thinking about what is our body showing us that we need to start doing to heal, or what old injuries that we've hidden pain into, that we've hidden, that we need to bring forward so we can do it, so we can heal it. I keep saying I love rice. I love rice too, Toddy. So I don't know if you're still there, but you know I love rice. And next week, no, Thursday we are. I don't know where we are in this book, but it feels like we're flying through it, but we're somewhere on the Celestine prophecy. So we'll continue reading Celestine prophecies. And next week's show should be a little bit about, I don't know. It's definitely going to tie more into how we are healing our mind and the tools we need. But what tools are we going to discuss? I don't know. We may go deeper into spaces. Last week I said we go deeper into tools, and we did. So now I said we go deeper into spaces. We probably will go deeper into spaces, but we'll figure it out, family, together. So if you can't make it with us Thursday, I hope to see you next Tuesday. If you can't, I still wish you gratitudes and blessings and all those good things as you go forward in your day, tomorrow, and the rest of the week. And I appreciate you spending a little time with the Soul family. I appreciate you helping to cultivate a space. Oh shoot. A space for growth and healing for everybody, right? Um, I hope you